What's going on, guys? I am back with another video. It has been a while. I did put out that time lapse of me putting stuff on my iPad. I just wanted to get something out there. But I am back with another video, and it's different than what I normally do. Obviously, I like tech videos. Um, when you think about it, movies, TV shows, even video games, it's tech, it's technology, right? They got to use that to make the thing. So what I wanted to start doing was sort of like a review slash podcast type of channel or series on my channel, talking about other nerd related things. And what better property to start with than a video game adaptation to live action. And one of my favorite video games or video game series that I've played in a long time, and that's The Last of Us. So really good game. I played both one and two a little, I think about a little over a year ago. And so I'm not super fresh in my mind about everything in the game, but I do remember quite a bit. So what I wanted to do was talk about episode 1 to 5. So I at first wanted to do episode for episode videos, but that just wasn't feasible with my work schedule and stuff like that. So I figured, okay, hit the midway point or whatever, and we have a week off because of the Super Bowl. So I figured, okay, let me jump in now, and I'll just give my thoughts as someone who has played the game. Let me just kind of give my thoughts, what I think of the live action adaptation, how it compares to the game, what works, what doesn't work, or, what have you. So, speaking of shows, before we get into it, really quick, I don't know if you can see my shirt here. So, anyone who knows what this show is, the dinosaur show, not the mama. Just to give you an idea of how old I am, I used to watch this show all the time back in the day growing up. So do with that what you will. But this little baby right here, it sums up my life as a dad with all my kids. So yeah, that being said, all right, let's go ahead and get into The Last of Us. I'm not going to get too detailed and just do like a crazy episode breakdown. I mean, everyone can watch the show, but I'm just going to kind of hit points that stood out to me and stuff like that as we go through it. So yeah, so let's just jump into it. So it episode one was really cool for me because it's been a while since I played the games. So just jumping into the beginning of the game, essentially with the beginning of the show, it felt so. There were a lot of moments that felt so one for one, like shot for shot. But you got a bit more, and that's the cool thing about doing a live adaptation like this. Because in a game, the thing is, games have you have cut scenes and stuff like that. You got to build story in certain ways and whatnot, but you can't really spend that much time building the story and like just having the player sit there and watch hours upon hours of cutscenes. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some games that have substantially long cutscenes, and I think Last of Us, you got some pretty lengthy ones here and there, but you can't veer off and do a whole lot of that because it's a game, we want to play it, right? So it was nice to see in the show how they just kind of like really give you that story between Joel and his daughter, show like their relationship with the neighbors and stuff like that. We even follow what's her Sarah. We go with her to school for a moment and stuff like that. So I think that was really cool to just give us a little bit extra, and it was nice. It for me, it didn't take me out of the show at all. It just let me. It really let me kind of like really get into the mindset of, okay, let's see when things start to go haywire and crazy. So when there's a scene where Sarah is at the neighbor's house, and it was probably one of the creepiest things I've seen in a while. But when she's looking for, I think it's a CD or a movie or something like that, and you have the older lady that you see, oh, she starts spazzing out in the background, and I know for me, I had to thought, I was like, yo, are they gonna have her pop off like right there or whatever? But the grandma or whatever, the old lady didn't, she didn't do nothing, she didn't do anything in that moment. But that was just creepy to see. Oh, because that lets you know, okay, the craziness that's going to happen in the world, it's reached them, right? It's reached them already. So it was nice that they gave us the information we needed, showed us the relationship between Joel and his daughter. You see Joel's brother as well. You get like the neighborhood vibe. You realize they're in a community where everyone kind of knows everyone. So Joel, he has to go get his brother out of jail. There was some craziness, and you hear his brother talk about how, oh, this guy, he just started going crazy, and I hit him, and blah blah blah. And it makes you start thinking, okay, did he deal with a drunk person? Probably not. It was probably someone infected, but you don't know for sure. But that's kind of where your mind goes. So at night, Joel goes to get his brother out of jail, bail him out, and this scene with Sarah kind of walking through the house. You do this in the game. You're Sarah and you walk through the house, and in the game, obviously you're allowed. You can kind of explore a little bit, so you can go in Joel's room and you can go here and there. And there's a TV playing the news. I think it's either TV or radio, but you hear like the news in the background, and oh, they're talking about this craziness that's starting to ensue more and more and more. So pretty similar to the game. Obviously, they trim some stuff down, and it works. It works just fine. You don't need to do the whole exploring and looking at stuff and all that. And then you have the part where Sarah, he goes to check on the neighbors. Now, look, it's obviously it's a show. They gotta get some stuff, and they gotta get the ball rolling. But as me as a grown man, if I'm used to someone being somewhere and you can call out their name and they're like, hey, what's up? And then you call out and there's nothing, and then their dog is freaking out. And then when you're like, come on, Sparky, and Sparky ain't having it, and goes the other way. I'm not going in there. I'm just saying, but I get it for, we got to build story. So, goes in there, and this was yet another just, oh, it was so creepy. So you got the old man who his throat is like slit or something, and then she looks around the little island corner, and there's the old lady on the wife, and with all those nasty whatever's coming out of the mouth, and that was just so creepy looking. And also because there was no like expression really on the old lady's face, so that just was, ugh. Real quick, I want to know, so are like mushrooms just like out here angry as shit? You know what I mean? Like, because like, so the fungus takes over people or whatever, right? Why are they beating the shit out? Like, because I mean, I know they want to just take over. They're like parasites or whatever. They need host bodies, but like, I mean, these like zombies, they're not zombies technically, but kind of technically are. But they squaring up with people and stuff. Like, so I'm just like, is fungus out here just like angry? Like they just ready to, Anyway, so because like, why slit the guy's throat? Like, I don't understand. He was still alive. You didn't do the little to him. You just like die. Like I don't know, because that defeats the purpose of your plan if you want to take. I'm getting into the weeds of it. So anyway, okay, so this part coming up was very, very much like the game too. So Sarah runs out of the house. The old lady's chasing her, blah, and everything. Joel shows up with his brother, take out the old lady. Like the whole deal happens, and it was so crazy because one of the neighbors comes out, and I think Joel yells like, whoever, Bobby, get back in that, or whoever it was, because they're like, what are you doing? And then they pull off, and then you see in the background that the infected jumps on the neighbor, and it's like, ooh, you should have listened. But so this scene in the truck, and the whole deal with them talking, and Joel and his brother like trying to figure out where they're gonna go, seeing the mayhem that's taking place around them outside of the truck, seeing the person on the side of the road, the house burning. I can't remember if there was a house burning, but I just remember that in the game there was a lot of craziness happening while Joel and his brother Tommy are trying to figure out, they're trying to plan, and they're like, okay, go this way and take this and that and the other. And then even I believe in the game you do try to get on like this freeway or whatever, and it's blocked, and then you go off-roading and all that, right? So and they like drive through the little, the scene where they're driving through the little town, that for me was like one for one. From what I remember from the game, that was shot for shot. It was crazy, like how accurate they did that. It was amazing. And then you got, you know, Joel and Sarah going through the building, the infected chasing them. That whole deal was just wild and very, gets your heart pumping. Um, so fast forward to, they're in the middle of the field, and I remember in the even in the game that this part made me so mad, but it for some reason it's a little more impactful because you're seeing like real life humans, even though it's a show, but seeing real life humans portraying this. But when the military member pulls a gun on them, and you got Joel, we're not infected, we're not infected, in the way that he was saying that, and you just knew what was going to happen. Like, even if you've never played the game or anything, you just knew what was going to happen. And of course shoots, and that was, I'm not gonna lie, I like teared up. And I don't know if I teared up in the game, just because when I'm playing a game, even if it's really good, my brain is still very much has the understanding that it's fake. Even though I know that with movies and TV shows too, but with a game, you have the controller in your hand. It's a cutscene. You're kind of waiting to just get to the next point where you're controlling a character and doing the thing, and but to just be sitting there watching, and you don't have control in the way that you do in the game. I mean, granted, you don't have control in cutscenes really, but so just sitting there watching, and it's real people, and especially being a father, and that whole situation with Sarah and her passing away like that, it was just like, oh yeah. So that hit the feels. So then you fast forward, it was really cool how they showed you who Joel became without needing to show you all of these different like storylines throughout the 20 years. Like there's a kid that they found, brought the kid to the QZ, tested the kid is infected, they realize it, and the nice thing is that the people were sweet to the kid, and they're like, oh, we're gonna give you food and all the toys and this, that, and the other. And you can assume they gave the kid some sort of injection that just like put him to sleep, and then you know um but and then so you see that what people do, or what they're doing in the quarantine zone, they're burning bodies. And there's that scene where the truck pulls up, and there's this lady that opens the back, sees the little kid, and she just like just couldn't handle it. Touches a man, obviously it's Joel. Joel turns, she's like, I can't do it, and he just stone cold face. It's like, and then it just cuts to him walking with the body, and then just tossing the body into the flame, and kind of like it was nothing. So, and it that was a way of letting you know, like, Joel ain't the goofy, how he was cracking jokes with Sarah, and, smack talking and smiling, and all that stuff, while very much showing that he is a capable, like, individual. Now, no, he is hardened, he is jaded, he has accepted the world that he's in, understands that life sucks, and he's just going to do what he needs to do to get by, to survive. After that, they cut scene to, you realize that these are jobs people get. So you get the job of throwing bodies into the flame, and then that pays however much it pays. And then Joel asks the guy that's handing out the like ration tickets or whatever, what else do you got? And he tells him the couple of jobs and all that. So Joel very much does what he needs to get by in this world, and you learn that very quickly. We meet Tess, who is also in the game as well. You got the situation where Tess got beat up by some guys, and she's talking to the guy that I guess was like in charge of the guys that beat her up, and he expresses his fear, and they don't say it, but you could, well, as someone who played the game, I already knew who they were talking about, but I feel like you could kind of put it together when he's like, oh, but what's your guy gonna do? And she's like, hey, I tell him what to do, you don't gotta worry. But the guy that was in charge of the little henchman was all afraid. So, and then you're like, oh, so also you don't mess with Joel. Like, Joel apparently will handle business when he needs to. So that was like a little cool insight to see as well. You got Joel who goes home, gets drunk or whatever, and then you get Tess who shows up to the same apartment or whatever, and then climbs in bed with him. So then you're like, oh, they're a couple or something. Okay, cool. Um, then we meet Ellie. Um, Now I'm hoping I'm telling this in order because I didn't take notes or anything. I'm just going straight off of my memory of watching the show and my memory of playing the game. So we end up meeting Ellie. Um, the actress that they have that's playing Ellie, it works, I guess. Ellie is pretty abrasive in the game, pretty foul mouthed and stuff, and this girl seems to be doing it just fine. I think in the game, Ellie, even in the game, Ellie at this point, because she's younger than she will be in part two, but Ellie looked a little more like she's been through some shit. And this girl, not to knock her or anything, just she still looks so innocent, but maybe that's for the better because it works. It really conveys it. This child that is going to get corrupted by this world, right? This world that has become. But yeah, it's just in the game, Ellie seems a bit more weathered already when you meet her, and she's being held by the Fireflies, and you realize they keep testing her, her functions and faculties and stuff like that, and they're trying to figure out if anything is going to go wrong with her, and we end up finding out that she was bit. So Tess and Joel, because they're trying to work their own deal, they end up getting Ellie, pretty much passed on to them, because they need to transport her somewhere, and they'll get what they need from the people that they're supposed to meet, and then so that kind of starts the journey going out of the quarantine zone. Going into episode 2, Tess and Joel end up seeing that Ellie was bit. Tess and Joel are very skeptical of Ellie, and they're like, yeah, hey, whoa, what's going on here? And the wild thing is, Tess, very quickly, you can kind of see, she kind of just warms up to the idea that Ellie must be immune or something. Joel, on the other hand, is like, nah, I'm keeping this kid at a 10-foot pole length. Like, he's ready to just offer. He's like, there's a bite, shoot. That's what I know. I've been doing it for 20 years. You got a bite, I shoot you. That's it. So it was kind of cool to see that Tess was like the voice of reason for Joel. But so they're on their journey going, trying to sneak out of the quarantine zone and get to the rendezvous point that they need to get to. And one of the things that we end up seeing and learning is how different the infected are in the show versus the game. So in the game, you get infected they're through like the bites or whatever, and then there's spores, right? So it's like in the air, breathing in. But it's cool the change that they did with this like the way that the fungus works and how it connects them and everything. I think it's cool. And also spores floating in the air, that wouldn't really work, as far as like why people aren't getting infected at a crazy rate, because wind blows. Things that float in the air means they're, light as or lighter than air, and wind will carry them to somewhere else. You know what I mean? So the way that they did it this way, I think it works. Even though in the game you don't really think about it because it's game mechanics, right? You stay out of this little section and you go around, and it's fine. There's a fun little part which is in the game. So when they're going through, I think it's a hotel lobby, and then there's like water on the floor level, and Ellie gets scared. She's like, I can't swim. And then Joel shows her like it's only knee deep, and she's like, well, how was I supposed to know? But it was a cute little moment. It was funny. But that is in the game. That does happen in the game, where Ellie is like not so okay around water if it's deep and stuff, because she really can't swim. And it's wild because even in the game, you forget sometimes as you're playing that, oh, it's been a hella long time. Like, this world is how it is, and it's been, this desolate place for a very long time. So Ellie does not know the world that we knew before everything went crazy, but you forget that sometimes. So when she made the comment, you think they had swimming pools in the QZ or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Wait, she wasn't ever going to amusement parks or something, or someone's backyard where they have a swimming pool. She never did any of that. Her whole world is the apocalypse. So that was kind of crazy because you kind of forget, and then you realize, oh yeah, it's been 20 years. And she's only like 14 or something. So yeah, she doesn't know at all what the world was like, aside from reading books, maybe hearing stories from people. So, and that's a kind of a crazy thing to think about. There's a point where when Ellie, Joel, and Tess are doing their travels, and you get to this point where you end up coming across clickers, and they are scary in the game, and they are just as scary in the show. They're blind. They got super sensitive bat hearing. So the people who play the game will be able to relate to the frustration of how in the show Joel is like fighting, and they're tussling with one of the clickers and stuff, and there's this back and forth and all that. In the game, if a clicker closes the distance on you and you haven't shot it in the head, yeah, you got to start over. Yeah, you're dead. There is no tussling with the clickers. Also, real quick, frustrating point, and anyone who has played the game, let me know if you've experienced this too, because in the game, when you're around clickers, you will do all your whole due diligence. You will crouch. You will be moving slow. You will stand still, and these freaking things gravitate to where you are, even if you're not moving. And then when they get close enough, they just freak out and attack you, even if you don't move. Has anyone else experienced that? Because I have, and I used to get so mad when I play the game because I'm like, yo, I'm not making this. I'm not moving. I'm not doing anything, and the thing is coming to me, and they'll still jump on you. So that was frustrating. But I like in the show how they had where Joel and Ellie were crouched down behind like the cabinet or whatever it was, and then Joel stepped on a little glass, and then there was that moment of, oh shit. And then the camera pans up, and the clicker's just like and jumps over the cabinet or whatever it is, and jumps on Joel. But the way that they did the clickers, I mean, it's very reminiscent to the game. Like it's very, for me, one for one. Just their movements, the sounds that they make, how they just lose their shit whenever they hear something, and they just beeline for that sound no matter what it is, and they're just ready to attack. Once again, you're Fungus. I don't know why you're so angry, Fungus. And you want to just beat up everyone. Maybe see a therapist. So during that whole ordeal, because there's two clickers, and Tess ends up having her own deal with another clicker that they don't really show too much of, and then we get to the point where it's about to get to where they go to the rendezvous point. But there's a moment where Joel and Tess are talking, because Tess says how she like hurt her ankle or whatever, and Joel was helping her wrap it, and Ellie kind of went ahead, and Joel is all talking about being skeptical of Ellie and all that, and then Tess snaps on him essentially and is like, can you just take the win, dude? Like, you're just God, like, if she was going to change, she would have done it by now. Like, just, hello, wake up. Which I thought was cool. And it did kind of make Joel a little bit just like, you could tell he kind of like thought for a second. So that was nice. And obviously, as someone who has played the game, I immediately was like, oh, okay, they went a different route. She got bit. I know she got bit. Like, the whole deal of, oh, I got hurt. And I was like, she got bit at some point. Which during the whole altercation, Ellie got bit again by one of the clickers, and still no change, which it just kind of re-cements that she's immune. So it's wild when they get to where they're supposed to meet up, and there's no one there, and they're realizing something crazy must have happened, and they go into that one building, and everyone's dead. And I can't fully remember how this plays out in the game, but I know you get to this place in the game. But I think in the game, there's like bandits or something. I don't know who they are, but I think in the game you have to fight a bunch of people, and I think that's how. Because spoiler alert, Tess ends up dying. But I think that's how. I can't fully remember, but because I remember getting to that building, and I think there's like a shootout that happens. There's a bunch of guys that are converging and stuff like that. But once again, what's cool about this show is they've made these changes, but the changes that they've made work. And it doesn't take away from the story. It's still very much The Last of Us, still very similar to the game, and still very engaging. And yeah, it just works. So they get there. A bunch of people are dead. One of the people, what I guess was infected, and starts to and then Joel shoots it, and in doing so, and because the infected are kind of connected through this like this hive mind, so to speak, that big pile that you saw earlier, they all get alerted that, oh, they're all over here, let's go. And then you just got this mob that just gets up in there, they start running, and Joel and Tess immediately are like, they realize what happened. They're like, oh crap, the swarm is coming. Joel and Tess have this whole back and forth, and where Tess is just like, I'm not going back, and this, that, and the other. And it was crazy how Ellie can like deduce situations just like she did in episode 1 about the music. But Ellie immediately realized, oh, Tess has been bit. And so Tess shows it and everything. And it was just like this moment where Joel just. It was kind of like Joel didn't know what to do for a second. Like he was kind of like scared of her, like nervous or whatever. But then she's talking to him and telling him, hey, clearly Ellie is immune. Clearly there's something important about her and her blood, and you need to do whatever you got to do to get her to where she needs to get to, because this world has been, messed up for far too long. And this is the one thing that I'm asking of you. And it was kind of, I don't know, at least for me, it was kind of heartbreaking when you heard her say the whole line where she's like, I never asked you anything. I never asked you to feel how I felt. And when you think about that, and what's also crazy is in the next episode, you realize just how long they've, I guess, known each other or been together. And it's kind of like, so it meant more to her. And she was like in love with Joel. And Joel maybe was just kind of like, hey, this is nice, but didn't really invest. And which kind of makes sense for who he is, and having lost his daughter. He didn't want to get close to anyone, just to lose them. So he forces himself to not feel as strongly, maybe. Who knows? I'm speculating. So Tess pretty much puts it on Joel of like, hey, look, I can't go with you no more. But do this. This is the right thing. We've done a lot of crap. We've done a lot of not so great things to survive. This is a way that you can atone for both of us, essentially. And she knocks over the barrels of gasoline and all that stuff. And then the creepiest thing at the end. So Joel grabs Ellie. They book it out of there. The swarm's coming. Tess is trying to light the lighter. Don't you love how in movies and TV shows, like I think I have like 4 different lighters just sprinkled around my apartment. Any one of them I can grab and they will light. And some of these I've had for, I don't even know how long. They've just been in random boxes and stuff like. But in TV shows and movies, lighters never light when you need them to, like ever. So that was a little annoying, but it works. But I was just like, okay, really, like lighters never. Okay. Like, I feel like you would have been aware it's not going to light sooner than that, living in a world like that. I'm pretty sure you use the lighter quite often. You got to make a fire or whatever. I don't know. I'm speculating. Anyway, so the creepy part was how, so the swarm comes in and they're kind of going through and looking and rah and all that. But then you got the one that for some reason is not violent. Like, all the other like infected people just want to beat the shit out of everyone all the time. And then this one dude, he just rolls in. He's like, "What's up, girl?" And then he walks over to her all slow, and she's like, "Ah." And then he's just like, "Oh." And then the stuff comes, and that was creepy. And I just felt for that character in that moment of like, how do you, like, she's just enduring it, and she's like, ooh, gives me the chills just thinking about it. But yeah, so eventually the lighter lights. hit, she drops it in kaboom, and there was a bunch of grenades and stuff around there as well. So just kills all those infected and whatnot. So episode 3, we get to meet Bill and Frank, and I thought this episode was cool. I saw mixed things about this. A lot of people really loved it, and the story that it told, the love story between these two guys who are in the game. You only in the game, I believe, you only meet Bill, but you see a lot of letters. You find letters and stuff from Frank, and maybe from both of them to each other or something. I can't fully remember, but I know you find letters from Frank to Bill, and so this was kind of cool to just like tell a story that was very much part of the game, even though you didn't ever get to see it, but you learned about it, right? So, and that's the thing, because if people are going to be, oh, woke, blah 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 blah, no, they were in the game, they were gay, and they were a couple, they were together, and all this stuff. They just didn't ever show it really in the game. So this was cool to kind of see that relationship, and they made changes as well. But once again, as far as I'm concerned, the changes seem to work. And also there's stuff that you know like what we see go on with Bill and Frank in the episode. You could just kind of put it together. Maybe this is how certain things went with them. But anyway, so we meet Bill, and he's one of those doomsday prepper guys, and he's just kind of living the good life alone by himself. He's got this whole system, and he's able to just live in this home. He's got booby traps all around for not only infected, but raiders that try to get into what he's got, because people are like, hey, you have stuff, I want it. And he's like, no, 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 that's not going to happen here. So that's pretty cool. But he's living a good life, and then Frank ends up falling in one of the traps. They meet each other, and Frank, you see, is a silver tongue. He's a smooth criminal, man, and he's able to talk his way into getting some hospitality from Bill. So the scene with the piano, I thought it was very impactful. It was very emotional, because they, without really saying the words to each other, like made this connection with each other. And you realized, and even before that, when Bill gave Frank some food and then the wine, and then Frank was like, oh, to pair rabbit with and I don't know the brand of the wine that he said, something fancy sounding, but that was like one of the first sparks where you're like, wait, what's going on here? And then at the piano and the song and the whole deal, and it was wild, because when you think about the time that this was going on, because that was like 2000, what, I forget when it was, but it was like early 2000s that time frame was that it was showing when they met each other. Still very early on, still very much in a time in the world where the acceptance of homosexuality was, and I mean, in 2023 we're still dealing with that stupid crap, but that's a whole nother, I'm not going to get into that. But so it was wild when Bill sat down and was playing, and then Frank asks, who's the girl? And then Bill says, there is no girl. And Frank says, I know. And I was, in my head, I thought, was that like maybe a test from Frank to Bill of like, okay, is he going to express who he really is? Because I see it, but is he going to express it to me, or is he going to keep it hidden? And I don't know if that's the way that the writers were going with it, but that's kind of what it stood out to me. It was like a kind of a test of like, because look, there's no one around, it's just the two of us, and I see you. Are you willing to express that, or are you willing to express that you see yourself as well, or are you keeping that shut off? So, and then they have their whole connection that takes place, and then they become a couple. And then it's funny when they're in their argument, and then Frank's like telling him, "I'm gonna fix up the boutique and this and that, and we're gonna have friends and all that stuff." And I remember when that was first happening, my brain didn't immediately go to Joel and Tess yet. I thought it was gonna be a deal where they're trying to like be nice with people, and then someone tries to like screw them over or whatever. And he's like, "I'm talking to a nice woman on the radio." I just thought that whole interaction was pretty funny. But and then so we see that, oh, Joel and Tess, who this is early 2000, whatever. You can assume at this point they're not just partners; they're probably already a couple, and then they show up to have like lunch or whatever with Bill and Frank, and Bill's just sitting there all skeptical with the gun on the table, pointing it at Joel, and what's funny is how Joel and Tess both expressed to Bill though that they get why he's like that. So you could tell they've already been through some shit at this point. So they get the skepticism and stuff like that. But then it's funny because when Frank and Tess end up leaving the table, and Joel, like, he's all talking to him. I forget exactly what he says, but he's like, I get why you're this way, this, that, and the other. And he says something, and he's like, "You get that gun out of my face." And I guess the way he said it, Bill realized, okay, I don't want to have issues, and he put the gun away. But I just thought that was funny because yet again, that just shows like, yeah, Joel is not one to mess with, right? And he's getting annoyed. It's like, enough with that gun, because I don't want to have to take it from you and shoot you with it, right? Or something, who knows. But so that whole interaction was cool. And then the Joel and Tess make the offer to them about working together, and Bill's like, we're good, this and the other. And then when Joel says the thing about, there'll be raiders that are gonna want what you have because you're living the good life here, and we can help and all that stuff. And of course, you end up seeing that take place, and the Raiders show up, and they get the best of Bill and Frank get the best of the Raiders, thanks to the safety measures and security measures and stuff like that. Then fast forward to, it's been the 20 years or whatever, and Bill and Frank are old, and Frank is sick. I don't know if they ever said what he has. And I apologize, I can't recall, but he's sick and he pretty much is on his way out, and Bill is taking care of him and stuff. And they get to the point of landing on, they're gonna have their final day together, and that whole deal was super emotional as well. And how Frank tells him, pretty much, you're gonna poison me and let me go to sleep and die or whatever. And they do like a kind of like a Romeo and Juliet, or a Romeo and Romeo. I don't know how that would work. But so pretty much, and it's crazy because Bill, being this closed off, hardened, just like screw the world and everyone in it, but getting to a point where he tells Frank how, like, you know what, I'm gonna go too, and we're gonna go together because you were my goal, you were my mission, you were my point of living, and we had a life together, and I'm good. I don't need to be here alone anymore. I had you. I'm old. You're sick. Look, I'm done too. So we're both done, and we're just gonna go. So that was impactful and emotional as well. That was really heavy. And then at the end, you fast forward to Joel and Ellie showing up there, and you know, going and getting some supplies and everything, and the letter that Bill ended up leaving for anyone but really for Joel, and say how he never liked him anyway or whatever. So I thought that was funny. They did go a different route than in the game, because in the game, I believe Frank had gotten bit or whatever, got infected or something. And one of the sad things in the game, and personally I prefer that this way, just because the game seemed to have tried to make a point, it seemed like, to make things just so hurtful, like so painful in a lot of different ways, whereas the show seems to be going towards like making things a bit more heartfelt and emotional. Like, they're still tragic, but in a way more kind of I don't know the right term for it, but just like kind of hits you in the feels, but in a way where it's like endearing even a little bit. So but in the game, you end up find I think you find a letter or whatever from Frank to I think it's from Frank to Bill, and Frank saying how he actually like hated Bill or couldn't stand him, and he never truly loved him or whatever. It was like this, just like, oh geez, man, just like just lay more, layer more on there. It's bad enough we're in an apocalypse, but you just keep pouring it on more and more and more. Um, so I like the way that the show is going, because it's just like, once again, the changes that they make work, and they're good, and it's still very much The Last of Us. All right, so now we get into episode 4. So, um, episode 4, there's a lot of stuff that takes place that's very reminiscent of the game, and then a lot that isn't even in the game, which is funny because it's been so long. I was thinking, I'm like, yo, wait, is this the game or not? Did they make this up? I had to actually look up some of the stuff, because I just couldn't remember for whatever reason. But I think it's because they did so well of making it fit into this world, and into what's taking place, that it's like, yeah, it very much could have been. So episode 4, one of the things that was a deviation is we meet a character by the name of Kathleen. Kathleen is not in the game, but I thought she was for a second, because in the game you deal with so many people, and there's so many different things. But she's not in the game. They made her for the show, but she works, and she's this leader of this group of people, and they are just out for blood. And you at first you don't know exactly why, and then you find out that they're looking for someone named Henry, and you're trying to put stuff together. But so there's this part in episode 4. So Joel and Ellie, they got the truck from Bill. So they got a truck from Bill and Frank's place and whatnot. So they were going, and there's a part where they couldn't go any further. The road was like blocked off, so they had to circle around. They get to this one point where they're driving through this like part of like a city, and there's this guy limping out, and he's like, help me, and stuff. And Joel realizes what's really up immediately. And so tells Ellie, buckle up, floors it, and can't remember if they hit the guy or not, but they start getting shot at from people that are like on rooftops and stuff like that. And then they crash. And this part right here, very much like in the game, because this is what happens in the game. Someone's trying to ask for help. You're like, nope, F you, dude. Shooting. You crash into a store. You got to get out, and they're just like yelling obscenities at you and stuff, and shooting, and you got to duck down. It's you and Ellie and this whole deal. So you have a shootout in the game, just like, and it looked so. I mean, it was like a little different, but for the most, it was like one for one from the game. So that was really cool. So Joel takes out a few of the shooters and stuff, and then you got the guy that comes in the back door, jumps on Joel, and they kind of scuffle. And before that, Joel had Ellie hide in this hole in the wall for safety and all that. So Joel ends up getting overpowered, and then I think this was another deviation, because you had where Ellie had took a gun from Bill and Frank's place, and Joel doesn't want her having a gun, so she snuck it, put it in her bag and stuff. And that was one of the opening scenes, I think, in this episode, where she's like, oh, with the gun and like pointing it and like, yeah, I got me a gun, like a kid would most likely do, but she's like hiding it in her bag. But anyway, so Joel gets overpowered, and then Ellie comes out, sneaks out of the hole, walks up. I think in the game she like jumps on the dude and stabs him with like her like switchblade or something that she has, or just like a pocket knife. But I think they switched it, because in the show, obviously, she shoots the guy in the back, and then he like can't move. And this was kind of like a crazy part. So she shoots the guy, and then he immediately, his whole tone changes, and he's like, no, please, no, look, I didn't want to do it. I'm sorry. I was just playing. Like, the whole deal. Joel gets up, and you can tell he looks at Ellie with disappointment, but I think because I I think in the game it was still like a bigger like issue because Joel never wanted her to have to like harm anyone. Period. Because I don't think she had a gun in the game. I could be wrong. Maybe she did. Um, but you could see like he didn't really say anything. He looked at her kind of like disappointed, and then he's just like holds his hand out like, "Give me the gun," right? That you snuck, you kid, you. So takes the gun, and then the guy and the whole time the guy is just pleading like, don't kill me and this that, and the other. And then I don't know, for me maybe people have different thoughts of this because it is, apocalypse and the guy's about to die and stuff, but for me this was like a sign of like a real kind of messed up person, and kind of a coward, if you will, because they're ready to try and kill both of them, or maybe they would have tried to capture her. And I'm not going to expound on why I said that. Anyone who has seen any apocalyptic anything, you know what I'm getting at. But the guy on the floor turns to Ellie and is like, "I'm going to appeal to this child, and I'm going to f with her head." In, I guess, in hopes that she would beg Joel to not do the deed or something. And that just really, it really irked me. Like, no, hey, you were just trying to kill them. You were just trying to kill him. Don't. Oh, anyway. So this was wild though, because Ellie already is processing, dealing with the fact she shot the guy, but he's still alive. So, and then he's saying all this stuff, and then you could tell she knew what was going to happen, but still looking on in curiosity. And then Joel still trying to be that like mental moral protector of her, tells her to like go away, look away, or whatever, or like go in the other room or something. And you hear the guy still like pleading, pleading, pleading. And what's funny is you thought that it was going to be a gunshot, but he doesn't shoot the guy. So I guess he like stabs him or something. I'm not remembering that wrong, am I? No, he doesn't shoot the guy, which you think that's what's going to happen. But and then you see Ellie, so she's like hearing the like little tiny scuffle happen, and all that, and then there's like a tear or two or something, and she's like, you can tell she's like trying to process it. And then in my mind it was almost like then she remembered who she's traveling with and how he's very stoic and hardened, and she's like, "No, I don't got time for this emotional stuff." And she wipes her face, and then she's just back to like, "I'm good. Like, I'm good to go." Um so that that was yet another, there's a lot of this because there's a lot of heavy moments in the game, and there's a lot of heavy moments in the show. But so she just kind of processes that information, and then they just move on, right? So then we see more of Kathleen, um, and I might be getting like the points of the episode mixed up, so my apologies. But so we see more about Kathleen and her just unwillingness to be reasonable. We see how she had this old guy captive, who you realize later on during the conversation that he was her doctor, her pediatrician. He delivered her when she was a baby, and she's like demanding information from him, and he's trying to appeal to like her heart that she clearly left somewhere, and isn't in her chest anymore. And uh, there was like this moment where she she doesn't act. She leaves the guy captive, and then she goes to get information about. Oh, I think it's when they're telling her like, "Hey, these group of dudes just got killed by someone random. We don't know who it is." So then she's thinking, "Oh, it's Henry that sent people and blah blah blah," even though it wasn't. But that's just the way that her mind works. So, and one of them is dying, and because the old guy's a doctor, she's like, can he be saved, or this that, and the other. And I think the guy ends up just dying anyway, or maybe they're like, "Nope, there's nothing we can do," or something. And then she gets pissed, and she just marches back to the cell they had the guy in, and just blows him away. Like, he's still a doctor in the apocalypse. Like, what? I mean, I don't know. Leave him locked up, I guess. Why are you gonna kill the guy? Like, he could be of help. But so you just realize she's just very one track mind. She's very much just on her own vendetta. And then as the story progresses, and even in the next episode you learn a lot more. But so now Joel and Ellie have gone through, and here's the crazy thing is, it doesn't matter that her people attacked them, just an old guy with a little girl. That doesn't matter. But because her people got killed, she's like, find them and murder the shit out of them. Like, she's just kill them, kill them, kill them. She's like the queen, the off with their heads. Was that Alice in Wonderland? So, um, yeah. So she is just, you realize Kathleen is just a horrible person. Um, so, um, so Joel and Ellie, they're going through, and I'm trying to remember. There's probably stuff from the episode that I'm forgetting, so my apologies. But also, I'm trying not to do scene for scene, but I keep doing it anyway. So pretty much, Joel and Ellie, they're trying to make their way through, and they're trying to go unseen and be be incognito, if you will. I believe, yeah, this episode is also where the pun book comes into play. This was such a cool thing that they did in the game. So in the game, when you're in an area for a while and you're exploring, you're looting, and you're just looking for how to get to wherever you need to go, Ellie will randomly pull out a pun book and start just telling these like pun jokes, these dad jokes and stuff. And it's cool because in the game, you even have it. I think they even depicted in the game how Joel first is just like whatever, and then where he kind of starts to warm up to it a little bit, which is kind of cool. So the pun, her having the pun book in the show was super awesome, because anyone who knows me knows I love dad jokes. I love puns. Like, I'm one of those weirdos that the lamer the joke, the funnier it is to me. But so yeah, so that was really cool too. So at the end of the episode, Joel and Ellie end up getting to a spot in a building where they're like, okay, they're gonna hunker down for the night, and Joel is breaking glass at like the entryway and spreading it around and stuff, and Ellie's like asking him what he's doing, and realize it's like an alarm, kind of like an alarm system, right? So they lay down, and I can't. Oh man, I should have wrote down the joke for this, but it was cool because there was this last little joke that Ellie told, and then it shows Joel. He's laying there, his back turned to her, but and then he starts smiling, and then he starts laughing, and then she laughs, and that was a cool little moment that just showed how much more like they're becoming close to each other and just kind of understanding each other. And it was really cool how Ellie, it was almost like Ellie kind of just had this goal to kind of you know punch through, break through Joel's hardened exterior, and she was like, I'm gonna find a way to get to the human that's inside of the robot, which is Joel. And that was a nice little moment that showed that she is actually kind of breaking through there, just given everything that they've gone through, and just her, because she's still an innocent kid, you know what I mean? So that was a cool little moment. At the end of the episode, you get Ellie saying, Joel, like wake up or whatever, and he wakes up, and then there's a little boy in front of Joel, paint on his face, a little black boy with a gun in Joel's face, and he's like, shh. And Joel looks over, and there's an older black guy with a gun on Ellie. The episode ends. So episode 5, we learn who those characters are. So it's Henry is the older black guy, and Sam is the younger one. So they're brothers. And this was a change that they did in the show, which I think once again it works, and it's so great. Because in the show they made Sam deaf. In the game, Sam isn't deaf. But it just works because it's just another layer of dependability, and another just layer of why Henry does the things that he did, the things that he did. I mean, you would do them anyway, right? To save your brother, your sister, your loved one, whatever. But it just kind of adds a bit more, because being deaf in a world like that, like if Henry were taken away from Sam, like it's bad enough as a kid, it's bad enough even as an adult, and even a capable adult at that, being in a world like this. But you can't hear that you stepped on a thing that made a sound, or you tripped some, and then they're infected, running up behind. You can't hear them doing their screeching. You know what I mean? And there's a whole lot more to that. So, for me, it worked, the change that they made. But so you meet Henry and Sam, and you realize we learn that Sam or Henry is that's the Henry that Kathleen is trying to hunt down and thinks is this mastermind that is having people killed and doing all these things. But you learn very quickly that Henry is just a guy, and he's just a guy trying to protect his keep his little brother alive. So you have this interaction. This made me laugh. So in the beginning of episode 5, so um, Henry's got the gun on Ellie. The little boy Sam's got the gun on Joel, and Henry is trying to already kind of like uh, bargain with Joel, if you will. Like he's like, okay, I didn't hurt you guys, so I'm gonna let you up. But since I didn't hurt nobody, like you're not gonna hurt me either, right? And then Joel, he's looking all mad. He's like, yeah. That's right. And he's like, man, that tone, dude. Like, I don't believe you. And Ellie's like, no, no, no. He's just an asshole. That's how he talks. Like, Joel, just tell him he's okay. And then Joel keeps responding in this way that his voice sounds like, when I get up, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. Like, I'm gonna kill you. That's how he's coming off. And Ellie's just like, God, can you not? Like, I thought that interaction was hilarious. So pretty much, Henry appeals to Joel, like, hey, look, I'm not trying to do anything. I don't know who you are, so I'm trying to like keep myself and my brother safe. But look, I can work with you guys, and you end up learning that he saw the shootout, saw how capable Joel was, and realized they could form an alliance because he too was just trying to get out of the city, get out of there, get to safety, him and his brother. But he's got an unloaded gun, or he's got no bullets. He's just got a gun. But both the guns that he has, there's no bullets in them. And he's got his little brother that he's trying to look out for and all this. And he's just trying to get out of there and get away from, the mob that is trying to hunt him down. We end up learning also that Henry was once part of, I guess he was once part of the group that Kathleen is in charge of, but he ended up selling the leader of the group out. And you can assume, and we kind of just assume, because I don't know if he ever actually says it in the episode, but you just assume he did it because he needed to keep his brother safe. And he talked about how the leader was a good man, and all this stuff, but he sold him out and whatnot. And there was this point where when he tells Joel that he's a collaborator, a snitch, so to speak, and that's what Joel calls him, because Joel's like, I ain't working with no snitch, because they have a bad connotation to that, because it's like everyone's just trying to survive, and then you end up ratting out other people trying to survive because this like group that's in power, this military, militia or whatever, is demanding, whatever, and now they're gonna go and imprison or kill other innocent people who are just trying to survive. I want nothing to do with you, right? And then Joel realizes, oh, he's looking out for his little brother. Like, I'd probably do some stuff for Ellie now too, right? Like, that's kind of like, you could see kind of the wheels turning in Joel's head with that. But you realize that we learned that the leader of that group was Kathleen's brother, and so that's why she's got such a hard on for Henry, and she is just all about getting her revenge, and it shows it shows a lot in this episode. And I can't remember. So I can't remember if it was episode 4 or if it's episode 5, but there's a part where she gets informed that they found that there is a ton of infected, like underneath the city or whatever, in these tunnels or something like that, right? And she just kind of blows it off because she's like, well, I got to kill Henry first, and then we'll figure that out. But, priorities. Get revenge, keep everyone safe. Not the other way around. like F everyone else until I get my revenge, and then we can go back to protecting everyone. So very one track mind, this chick. So so there's a part in this episode where the Joel and Henry come to an agreement that, yeah, let's travel together. We're gonna work together to get out of here. And Henry's like telling how I know the city, but you can, you can kill things. Help me out. So there's a part. This is another part that I believe they changed in the game, because if I'm not mistaken, in the game, so because you go down to the sewers, because Henry's like, yeah, I heard that sewers are cleared out and we can make it through, and we can go this way and blah blah blah. So you go down there and you realize that you come across this area, or they come across this area where there's like drawings. You could tell children like were making like drawings on the walls and stuff like that, and you realize that there was this whole community that was living underground, but there's no one there. And I think Henry's like, well, what do you think happened, or someone asked that, and Joel's like, maybe they didn't follow the rules. And it showed like this like list of rules. I can't remember everything on there, but I would assume it had something to do with like stay out of this area and that area and this, and do these things to so that everyone can stay safe. But clearly that wasn't the case. So in the game, if I'm not mistaken, you go down there, but and then you do end up getting attacked by some infected, and you end up needing to escape. And there's a point where like y'all get separated, and Joel ends up with the little boy, and Henry ends up with Ellie, and then you see each other like through different like gates or over the walls, and they're like, hey, okay, go further down, and this, that, and the other. And you gotta take out infected and clickers and stuff like that. And I'm fine with them not putting that in the show, because in the game that was actually not consequential at all. Like you make it through that in the game. Like all four of you make it through that. So it's like, could you have put this struggle in? Yeah, but there's enough struggles as it is. Like they're already dealing with stuff, and you don't really need to depict this non-consequential thing that happens, because why? That's for the gamer to have some fun and kill some zombies and try to work on being stealthy and all this stuff. So didn't really need it. So for me it was fine that wasn't in there. And then we get to the little town towards the end of the episode, right? So when they get to the little town, this was very much reminiscent of the game, where it's like this long, you could almost imagine it was not necessarily a cul-de-sac, but like there was this tall house that was at the end of the street, and then you got houses on each side. There's a bunch of cars all blocking and all this stuff, and then they start getting shot at. And it was cool because in the game it's like that too. There's this big house, it's all dark, but then you just keep seeing the barrel flash from the shots of this person that's trying to snipe them, and you got to duck behind the cars and stuff. Now in the game, this part was very frustrating because that guy can see everything. Like no matter where you go, as soon as you peek from a car or whatever, pow, like he's shooting you. And no matter how far to the left or right you go, it felt like in the game, every time you moved, pow, he was shooting at you. And like his aim was like good in the game. It was like good but bad at the same time, because he just keeps shooting. He's got unlimited ammo. Just like he's got sniper bullets for days up there. But yeah, it was very frustrating in the game. So I remember when I was watching it and Joel like ran to the side and closed the gap like all quick. I was like, oh man, yeah, that's not how it went in the game. No, you had to do some stuff. But that part was cool because it was very very reminiscent of the game, and when you end up there, and then there's a part in the game, if I'm not mistaken. So in the show, they have like the big old dozer truck that comes in and just totally wrecks shit, and then Joel's like trying to shoot it, and then he eventually shoots the driver in it, and then the truck, that big old armored truck, veers off and just wrecks this house. But I think in the game, it had something to do with like there was a vehicle coming, but it wasn't coming that fast, and then I think there was like individuals on the back of it shooting or something like that, and then like people were kind of closing the gap, because I know you're playing as Joel and everyone's trying to get to where you're at, and then you got to like pick off people as they're like coming out. There might be parts of the game that I'm forgetting for this part, but I think that's kind of how it went. And then at some point, infected show up as well. So then you're trying to protect Ellie and Sam and Henry from the people and infected that are showing up on scene too, and stuff like that. I might be getting it mixed up, but it's something along those lines. Like I said, it's been a while since I played the game, but so they went a different route with the show. But once again, it still worked. So the big old truck crashes through the house, flames going up, and all this stuff. You got a bunch of other vehicles, I mean, there's a whole army. Like Kathleen is like with a whole army of people just for a dude and his like 8-year-old brother. Like, dang, lady, like relax. You know what I'm saying? But so all these people are out there, and they just all got like AKs and M16s and M4s and like all the weapons, just all the stuff. And so you got Henry, Ellie, and Sam behind the vehicle, and Kathleen is just there with her right hand man with the beard and long hair and stuff, and everyone's like all on target. And then she's like yelling to Henry like, "Okay, it's done. Come out. It's time for you to die." You and your brother. And then Henry's like, "Let the kids go. You could just kill me. Let the kids go though, please." And she's pretty much like, "Fuck them kids." Like, and it's like, golly. Because for one, Ellie ain't did nothing. She ain't even related to Henry. Not to say it's okay to kill the boy, but she just does not care. She just doesn't care. New people on the scene. Apparently, they were doing stuff, so they're gonna die. The little girl included, and you're gonna die. And your little deaf brother, who clearly didn't sell anyone out, he's gonna die too. Just because I am angry and my brother's dead, so now all of you need to die. And then there's this line. So Henry says to her, he's just a kid. Like, he's just a child. And she's like, "Oh, kids die all the time," and all this stuff. And then she's like, "Did you ever think about letting fate happen? Like, maybe he was supposed to die, Henry." And for a minute, because I'm watching this getting pissed. I'm like, "This fucking bitch, oh." So I'm getting mad, and I'm like, maybe your brother was supposed to die. Like, what about that? Why is it that your brother dying isn't fate, but you murdering a small child is fate? Like, why? I don't get that. Like, but yeah, so it was just showing her one track mindness, right? So she's just like demanding he come out and stuff. So Henry still gets up anyway, and he's walking out, and Ellie and Sam are still behind the car, and Henry's walking out with his hands up, and so Kathleen draws on him, and then you hear the of the truck like breaking through and falling into the hole in the ground where it crashed into that house, and it was like everyone realized, oh shit, like something's about to happen. So the truck falls in there, and then there's this moment. It was kind of like the still or the calm before the storm for like just a second or two, and then like just it was like if you've ever played the game Left 4 Dead, and when you get the swarms come and they're just running like crazy, it was like that. They were just pouring out of the ground, just all these infected, and so all the people of course turn, and they're shooting, and just craziness ensues. Just mayhem ensues, right? So that was like the cue for Henry, Ellie, and Sam to like try to book it, and Joel realizes like, oh crap, let me try to cover them. So Joel has impeccable aim, mind you, because Joel is just headshotting all of these infected that are just like, and they're running around like crazy, and he's just picking them off. So I mean, yeah, Joel can shoot. But so so Ellie gets separated from Henry and Sam, and they're all, they're just trying to get away from the people and the infected. So, oh man, Ellie ends up seeing there's this like van or SUV or something with a opening to a window, and she books it over there. She goes in, and of course Joel is covering her, shooting the infected. She climbs through there, and she's like thinking she's at safety for a second, and then there's this little tiny infected clicker girl that just like is like a contortionist and just like flips her way into the car, and then it's just like slink. She's like a human slinky over the seats coming to Ellie. It was like I was like, what is this? Like the Gretchers? And I don't know, but it was creepy because it was like this little tiny thing that's just like flipping, bending, and just like doing gymnastics or something. And she's like closing the gap in the SUV or the van or whatever it was to get to Ellie. So Ellie books it out of there, closes the door, and then you see that Henry and Sam are underneath another vehicle, and you got infected. They're laying down trying to get them and stuff. And so Ellie sees it, and she goes over. Joel sees it as well, and Ellie stabs one of the infected that's trying to get Henry. Stabs it, and I guess like stabbed it in the head or something, and then stabs the other one trying to get Sam. And then it doesn't work, and then Joel, of course, because he's just like expert, just yeah, he just lasered them, dude. It was like no scope, boom, just like yeah. So he took out that infected. Uh, they get from under there, they take off running, and here here comes Kathleen again. Even though here's how one track mind she is. Her people are just getting jumped on, and they're fighting and stuff. She doesn't give two shits. So they're Henry and all them about to go through the back gate and get out of there, and she's like, "No, stop! I need to still kill you because vengeance. I'm Batman." Or maybe Thomas Wayne. I don't. So she's just very much about trying to kill them, and I guess she says some bullshit. I can't remember what she says, but oh, it was sweet, sweet, sweet irony. With the comments she made about, oh, kids die all the time, and then there's the kid clicker somehow contortioned its way out of that van it was in, and shows up there and jumps on her and just proceeds to just beat the living hell out of Kathleen. Um, which I was just like, yes, like Kathleen, she's one of those characters that you hate like immediately, and you're just like, when is this bitch gonna die, right? And now that she was very much that one of those characters. Um, so
I don't know how to respond to that.
Apple, what the hell, man? Anyway, closing out the this episode, we get to the whole group, all four of them end up in some little house or whatever, and they're hunkering down for the night. You got Joel and Henry just talking about, yeah, you know what? We made this work. We could travel and this, that, and the other. And then you got Ellie and Sam being kids, going looking at comic books or whatever. Henry tells Sam it's time to go to bed. This, that, and the other. Close the door, and then Ellie proceeds to still go through the comic book with Sam, and then they start having a conversation. So Sam is like asking her stuff about, are you ever afraid, and this, that, and the other. But there's a point where he asks her, and he has a little writing pad, right? He has that little writing pad. So he ends up asking her if when people get changed, is it still them? And then it's like, oh man. And then pulls up his pant leg. Of course, he got bit. And this was one of the most heartbreaking things because once again, they're children. Like Ellie is a child. Yeah, she's a bit older than Sam, but she's still a child. So she tells him, my blood is medicine, which was just one of the sweetest things when you really think about it. That's what a kid would think, right? When you're hearing about, oh, you're immune, your blood can be used to help people and this. So like a kid is going to process that my blood can be like, it's like medicine. It can help. It can make you feel better or whatever. So and then she cuts her hand and she's bleeding and she rubs it on his bite. And in her head, that she's just thinking, okay, my blood's going to get into his blood, and then the good stuff in my blood is going to make the bad stuff in his blood go away. Very much, once again, innocent children. That's the way a child would think. And it was just like, oh, man. because you already knew if you've never played the games or anything, right? Watching this, you already know what's actually going to happen. You already know it. You already know that's not going to work. So Sam asks her if he's can she stay up all night with him, and she's like, yeah, but of course, you end up falling asleep. I mean, they're just going through hell. There's no way she wasn't going to fall asleep. So she wakes up, and there's Sam just sitting on the edge of the bed, and you already know what's coming, but you think for a second, okay, he's just up, did it work? Is he okay? Because he's just sitting there, like he didn't rip her face off. Like, so what? What's the deal? So she gets up and she goes over to him and she touches him, and then he turns, blah, and he's turned and he tries to jump on her. She starts screaming and everything. So Henry and Joel bust in, and Henry ends up getting Joel's gun. And then shoots at Joel, but he like shoots the floor to stop Joel from doing anything, because in this moment you could tell that Henry was still he's very much like, that's my little brother. Don't you do anything to my little brother. And it was crazy because that was for a split second. He had that. He shoots at Joel, and you could tell he's like, stay the fuck away from my little brother. And then in the next second, in the next moment, he just, bow, he blasts Sam, and then he's stunned. And the way that I took that was, I don't think he even meant to do it, and I don't think it was even in the way of like, he's my brother, I'll do it. I think he didn't want anything to happen to his brother, but instinctually, of living in this world for so long, like hearing someone in trouble, hearing the rah of an infected, his instincts took over, and it was almost like an involuntary reaction that he shot his brother. And then he stopped and he's like, what did I do? And he's like, he's like, what did I do? Like, he doesn't understand. And he's like holding the gun at Joel. And I don't even think he was aiming the gun at Joel for any malicious reason or anything like that. I think he literally was just so dazed and confused. He for a moment didn't even realize where he was, what was happening, what he did, any of that. He's just trying to process it, and he's just holding the gun there. He doesn't know what else to do, right? I don't think he would have shot Joel. And you got Joel just like, give me the gun, man. Come on, just give me the gun. Give me the gun. And he's trying to get it from him, because I think Joel already could see what was going to happen especially after he killed his little brother. I think Joel could see it, and he wanted to be able to talk him like, hey, he wasn't your brother anymore, but he never got that chance. So he's like, what did I do? What did I do? He's freaking out, and he doesn't. It's kind of like with Bill and Frank, right? Bill was ready to peace out because his whole goal became, or his whole like mission became, making sure Frank was okay and making sure Frank was alive and all that stuff. And with no more Frank, he's got no more purpose. So it was like kind of that same thing with Henry and Sam. Sam's gone. All I know is to take care of my little brother. I'm not even really trying to take care of me. I mean, I am, but I'm taking care of me so that I can take care of my brother. My brother's gone. Well, I can't live with it, because also I just did away with my brother, even though he did it. He did, but didn't. His brother was already gone. But so he's just like, there's no point, and so he takes himself out. Um, that was just such a heavy moment there too. That was just so, and I'm sure like you could just tell that was coming. Like it was his little brother. You could assume Henry's. I can't remember if he says how old he is, but you could assume Henry's probably mid to late 20s, right? Or maybe early to mid 20s, something like. He's probably in his 20s to some degree, and then his brother was like 8, right? So it's like he was like a dad. It was his little brother, but also he was like a dad to, So it's just a lot to try and process, and in that moment, and he couldn't process it. And the only two things he could probably realize was that I have no purpose anymore because my brother is gone, but also I made my brother gone, so I'm gonna be gone. Ooh. Um. So then we have the burial scene. So they had ended up burying Henry and Sam out from where they were staying, and you got Joel there, kind of finishing up, and then Ellie comes up, and Ellie is like a miniature Joel at this point because Ellie, so she comes up and she has the little writing pad, and I can't remember what she did first. I think she put the writing pad first. So Ellie comes up and she places the little writing pad on the grave, and you can assume that one's where, obviously, where Sam is. And then she gets Joel's bag and jacket and drops it next to him, and she's like, "Which way's west?" Like just stoic, just stone cold. She's like, "Which way's west?" And so Joel like looks and he points, and then she just starts walking, and she gets a little ways, and Joel's standing there looking, and I think it shows that he sees the pad first, and it says "I'm sorry," and then Joel kind of looks a certain way, and then Ellie is like, "Let's go," and it's like there was this moment of realization that Ellie isn't processing what took place the way that she should, especially as a kid going through this world, and so Ellie is Ellie is very much emulating what she has seen Joel do, which is shit happens, but we got to keep it moving. Shit happens, nope, keep it moving. And it was like he kind of realized, wait, that's not okay. And it's almost like he's realizing how he has been isn't okay, and he's starting to kind of, as he's starting to come out of his shell, um, Ellie is starting to put a shell up because of being forced to just because of the world that they live in. You know, they're not seeking out these crazy situations, but because of the stuff that they're going through in the world that they live in, Ellie is more and more starting to put up a shell while she was simultaneously breaking Joel's shell down. So I'm very curious to see how they go in the show. So I won't say anything moving forward in the games because I don't want to spoil anything. So I'm gonna just leave it off here. So final thoughts, just from episode 1 to 5 so far for me. Like I said, as someone who has played the games, even though I don't remember a whole lot of the games, like not super like accurate, but there's quite a bit I remember, but you know, I don't remember scene for scene in the game. This is very reminiscent of the game. This has got to be for me. I'm trying to think of a lot of stuff, and there's only been one or two other fairly decent live action adaptations that I've seen over the years, but this, I mean, everything just works. The changes that they made works. Sam being deaf works. The way that they killed Tess works. The story for Bill and Frank, it works. Everything that they've changed, it still works great, and it doesn't take from anything. They didn't, you know, make a character who they're not really. Like, they just, everything is working. For me, this is phenomenal. This is, so far, this is spot on for me. I'm very curious to see where they go moving forward for the rest of season 1. And just, if you've played the second game as well, there's so much story to be told. So even to the degree where I think they could do a few seasons, not just season 1 and 2, because if there are characters, especially in part 2, that you meet, and there's so many other stories that you could tell in this world. Now, granted, they don't have to do that, but just, I mean, just telling the first and second game alone would be great, as it's just little, you know, 2 season project, fine, but there's so much that could be told in this world for a bit, I think. So yeah, that being said, I'm just curious, but I'm loving it so far. I'd love to know what you guys think, and definitely feel free to let me know where I may have gotten things wrong in the show or the game, or what have you. Like I said, I don't remember everything. I literally just sat down and recorded this all off the top of my head. I didn't take any notes or anything. But that being said, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'm going to watch the rest, you know, as it comes out, and I'll do another video at the end of the season and just kind of sum up everything in my total thoughts. So that being said, once again, I appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.